Joining us now, Congressman, 7th District Republican Dave Brat. Congressman, great to have you with us, sir.
Hey, John, great to be on. Thanks for that plug.
Well, look, I am so excited about the op-ed that I put up on my Facebook page that you and Senator Jeff Sessions did, because it just speaks to exactly what is going on in the United States. I was hoping that you could share some of that with our audience, Dave.
Yeah, well, first off, Senator Sessions deserves the bulk of the praise here. He's been the senior statesman for 20 years, 2 decades working on this issue, just very thoughtful. And so the article, I think the readers are going to enjoy it, because it's not so much about laying out a specific policy proposal, but it's about trying to engage the American people with a question of whether or not our current immigration policy is serving the best interest of the American people. And immigration reform should mean improving the immigration system to where it benefits Americans first, and it should also be compassionate to the very immigrants we're allowing to come in. Right now, a lot of those immigrants coming in, and certainly folks in our inner cities, the young kids, the African-American brothers and sisters, and the Hispanics, can't find their way into the middle class because our labor market is broken. And so this is just trying to be a thoughtful piece to get folks to examine what we've been doing, and in line with what's going on with our search for a speaker and our trying to get to regular order. When did the American people ever vote on this current system that gives out millions of visas and green cards every year? And what we're missing is the voice of the American people in that debate, and so that's why we wrote the article. We want to get the American people in on this debate, instead of trying to pass the Enlist Act and this stuff at 2 a.m. in the middle of the morning. When you run these issues by the American people are very thoughtful, and I think we'll do well in the end by having the American people engaged in this debate.
Hey, Congressman, I want to read an excerpt of it, and it says, they simply cry out, this is those that want the open borders crowd, if you will, we must pass immigration reform, without ever explaining what they believe immigration reform means. And then you go on to say that it should mean improvements to the life of everyday Americans. At some juncture, we have to come into play. Instead, they never talk about taxes on the stress on the social systems, education, or anything else, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. You said the open borders crowd, and it's kind of symptomatic of what's going on in the country and politics. On the far left, you got 20 or 30 people in a room screaming at full thunder, and they have a disproportionate voice, but they really do not represent the people that they pretend to represent. And so it's kind of a paper tiger out there yelling. When you get the American people paying attention, the politicians wake up instantly. And so the people that are saying, hey, I represent huge numbers of people, that's not really the case. And you're exactly right. When the folks in the open border crowd comes into our offices, well, we just say, what do you want, right? Let's have a rational debate.
Right.
How many folks would you want coming in the country? And they don't even have an answer, because all they want is just a totally open-ended, endless open border policy, which of course can't work, right? And on the Democrat platform this week, you had 3 presidential candidates on the Democrat side promising free college, free Obamacare to illegal immigrants, and more Social Security. We're already $19 trillion in debt and have $100 trillion light on the mandatory spending and entitlement programs. And all the Democrat candidates are saying they want more. Well, the American people, I think, clearly are saying, slow this thing down and let's get our economy working again, and then we'll see where we stand. But right now, we need a timeout to get our own house in order.
It says, this is not immigration reform. This is the dissolution of the nation state, of the principle that a government exists to serve its own people.
Yeah, right on. I mean, and so that's what I was just saying. I mean, if you have no upper bound on the number of people you're going to allow into your country, you're no longer a country. And so the open borders folks, I mean, should we allow 7 billion people in from the rest of the world? Is that true compassion? No, that would be chaos. And you see that. I think everybody saw 60 Minutes this week with a refugee problem. Germany's trying to be compassionate, and they're getting hammered. And so you have to be smart and intelligent in the way you try to help people so that you actually end up helping people. And I worked at the World Bank, 25 years ago, and it's been very clear. I've always said I love everybody on the planet. Right? I went to seminary as well as getting a PhD in economics. It's about trying to help everybody. The irony is the left is against the very thing that will help the poor. The foundation of my campaign has always been the Judeo-Christian system, the rule of law, and free markets. And so at the World Bank, and my entire life has been devoted to preaching economics and ethics for all people, South America, Latin America, Mexico, etc. I want all those people to do well, and my whole life has been invested in seeing that happen. But the left is preventing free markets and the rule of law from going abroad and is actually holding people down in poverty. And you even see it in our own K-12 education system, in higher ed. A lot of the leftist faculty teach that capitalism and free markets and business is morally bad. Well, that's the kids' only shot out of poverty in this country, is to get a good job that pays, right? So they can buy a car and a house and feed their family.
Right.
So the country just needs to turn around on that kind of negative thinking. We got to get positive again, make this country great like it's always been. We've always been compassionate. We allow 1 million green cards a year, hundreds of thousands of work permits. Everybody knows this is the most generous country on the face of the earth. And so it's just time to be more thoughtful and design true immigration reform that's good for our citizens, that will increase our wage rates, that will improve our labor markets, that will pull people out of poverty and give everyone a chance to get into the middle class, which is no longer happening, right? We had subpar growth to 1 or 2% now. And in Virginia, I think we grew at 0% last year.
Right.
And so everybody's starting to get a sense that we have to make some changes and get back to what made us great. And that's what we're up to.
Why haven't we had this debate in a serious way is the first part of my follow-up question. And then the second is, how did we get this unholy alliance between liberal Democrats and the Republican corporate donor class, basically backing a completely open borders policy? How did this happen?
Right. Well, it's two good questions. The answer to your second one is the answer to the first one. So Jim Buchanan, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics, explains all of this. Mansur Olson on special interest groups. The reason this happens is because small groups of people, like I was saying, can act like they are disproportionately large. They raise a little bit of money, they go on the media, and they say, and they start calling names to the average American and the average small business or whatever, and they get scared. And so the average person is not represented in Washington, D.C. anymore. It's all special interests, the big corporations. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce wants this cheap labor for businesses so they can make more profits. Well, that's a good thing, except, as Milton Friedman said 40 years ago, if you have a very generous welfare system, which we do, right, somewhere on the ballpark of $30,000 a year in benefits for folks, then open borders does not work. And Milton Friedman said that 40 years ago, and it's just common sense.
Right.
So the unholy alliance of the left and the right is just special interests, only looking out for the narrow interests and not looking out for the welfare of the American people as a whole. And the American people are waking up, and finally, and you're seeing, right? I mean, you're seeing 72. I was on Meet the Press this week. People can go to my webpage, davebrat.com, and see some of that. But at the beginning of that show, even Chuck Todd noted 72% of Republicans are upset with our own leadership. 60% of Republicans feel betrayed. They're all voting for outsider candidates because they know the special interest. And on the Democrat side, you got the exact same thing. You have socialist/communist winning in some states on the Democrat side, promising a system that has brought poverty to the entire world for all of human history. Top-down planning under kings and pharaohs and despots and dictators. Centralizing fails every single time. And so the American people want to get it straight, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Let's go to last Wednesday's event in your district in Richmond, we broadcast it live. Donald Trump has a rally running for president, Congressman Brat, on a Wednesday night in the middle of nowhere by the Richmond International Speedway, not exactly the best area of Virginia, during a school night right in the middle of the baseball playoffs. 6,000 people turn out on a school night in the middle of the week. 95% of these people, I had never seen any of them. What is going on, Dave?
Well, I mean, that's it. I mean, Trump and Carson and Fiorina and Cruz, the outsider candidates, are over 60%, verging on 70% sometimes. And it's exactly what we're talking about here. The American people get a sense that our deals, right, our trade deals with the rest of the world aren't in the best interest of the American workers. We don't use our leverage to get things right for American manufacturing and the small business. Only the big guys have a seat at the table. And so everyone's looking for candidates who are just going to use common sense and realign things. And so Trump has a powerful message out there on tax cuts and immigration. I think he's going to be coming up with a veterans policy in a couple weeks to help the veterans out. Ben Carson, very thoughtful, humble man. Everybody just instantly likes him because he's so compassionate and such a nice guy. Carly's obviously the A-plus student, and it is very thoughtful on policy, great presentation. And so some of these outsiders are just have a new way of speaking, and people like it. They don't like the boring old script where you're scared to go off cue or something because you might say a word wrong. And the press will jump on you, right? Last week I was on Meet the Press. Just so your listeners know, PolitiFact actually changed the transcript. It's the most unethical thing I've ever seen. They changed this transcript from Meet the Press on purpose and added swear words that I said to my debate opponent and printed that, and it ended up being printed in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, and the Richmond Times-Dispatch doesn't take responsibility for it. So that's what politicians are scared of, but the people are demanding people with real courage, like our founders had, who will stand up and say, no, I don't care, right? It's not about me in the next race. It's about doing the right thing for the country, and I'm going to put my faith in the American people. And I feel the American people are coming to me in response to that message, and so hopefully it all works out great.
Congressman, Paul Ryan is the poster child for amnesty, open borders, etc. How do you back a Paul Ryan who stands for exactly the opposite of everything in your op-ed?
Yeah. So we differ on the immigration issue big time. What our group, the Freedom Caucus, we're looking for someone who's going to be fair on process. And so if the speaker is fair on process and pledges that in writing, then it really doesn't matter what their own personal policy prerogative is because will only get one vote. And so I'm going to allow Paul Ryan his vote to represent his conscience and his district because I want him to respect my vote for my district and my conscience. So what our group is saying is, look, we're not going to force it on the other guys like they've been forcing it on us, but give us regular order so that everybody can bring their votes to the floor and that when the budget comes up and we balance the budget in 10 years like we did this year, that is the budget. Instead, leadership ignores the budget that balances in 10 years, and now we're going to break the caps and have all sorts of nonsense. And that's what the American people are fed up with. So there's 20 other people running for speaker, and so we'll see where that process leads. I mean, I don't think there's some overwhelming support for any one candidate. If you got 24 people running with 5 votes each, right? If they got 5 friends each, you're already at half the conference right there at 125 people. So I don't think any one person's got it locked up yet at all.
All right, it's going to be interesting. We're out of time. We want to thank Congressman Dave Brat for being with us. More info, go to davebrat.com.